Mangalam Gurudevaya Devi Matriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindebhyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatar Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Majamam Ashmarachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahman Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Bhadrakali Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Veda Viranga Vedanta Vidyasthana Vevacha Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Sri Bhuvaneshwarye Namaha. Jai Ma Jai Ma. Happy to join once again as we work our way through the Devi Gita from the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. So we're coming close to the end of chapter 1, the appearance of the goddess before the Himalayas and the other gods. In our last week's discussion, after the goddess had appeared to them first as a pillar of light, then in the form of goddess Bhuvaneshwarī, they recited beautiful hymns praying to her. We spent a lot of time on these hymns. Then she asked, "What brings you together? What brings you together? What's your request?" In a certain sense, what is your boon? But she reminds them, right? He says, I am a wish fulfilling tree. I am your mother. I am right here, right? I always protect and give blessings, fulfill the desires of my loving devotees. And you are all my loving devotees. You are all have devotion to me, right? So reminding them, then she asks, why did you come? What is your prayer? What's the problem? Tell me what you're suffering. At the same time saying, you're my devotees. You're my loving devotees, right? So when they respond, they give beautiful verses reminding her, right, of the situation. A great demon, we'll have to bring this up. Of course, we mention almost every week. It's a little backup, but many people who are watching online have to catch up to where we are. But a great demon has taken over Tarakasura. He has a boon that he has two boons that he got from Lord Brahma. One is that he'll be invincible, right? So he easily takes over the three worlds, and that he becomes immortal. Of course, he can't be immortal. Nothing's immortal. And nothing created, no born being is immortal, right? So he asks for a clever boon, as is often the case with the demons, that he could only be killed. If he's going to be killed, he can only die at the hands of the 4-day-old son, legitimate son of Shiva, meaning Shiva's son from marriage, right? And of course, Shiva, the whole problem that started this whole spiritual crisis is that Sati has disappeared from the world. Shiva has no wife, right? He's meditating somewhere in the Himalayas, just meditating on the essential nature of the Devi, right? No interest. His eyes are closed. No interest in seeing her, searching for her, or getting married to her again, like that, right? And so this demon has taken over, and he can only. So we need you to be born, to arrange to be born, to take a body and become Shiva's wife, so that you can have a child. That child will become known as Kartikeya, Skanda, Shumagam. He'll kill so let me go back to that. I'll show you that verse real quick, remind you of the verse. Wrong. Yeah. Sorry. So they point out, of course, that she's all-knowing. What can we say in front of you? Thus emphasizing, we talked about last week, the difference between, although the one known as Brahman, you're the one known as Brahman, we're the one known as Brahman. In one sense, our essential nature is the same, yet there is a very real difference. you know everything, we know very little, you're all powerful, we're not all powerful. So that distinction between the jiva, although in one sense there's no distinction between jiva and Brahman and the goddess, but emphasizing the distinction between jiva and Ishwari, right, between the soul and the goddess, allows for devotion, and this text is the devotional text, right? While affirming the true non-duality, it still also affirms the difference that allows for devotion, right? The all-importance in this text is a devotional text ultimately, although it uses the language of Vedanta, it has it's Advaita Vedanta, it's radically a devotional text, right? So then their final prayer we ended up last week. May we always had two prayers. May we always show unswerving devotion to your lotus feet, right? This is our foremost wish. This is the first wish, the most important wish, right? And we also pray that you will assume a body. May you take a deha heitave. May you take a body, right, in order to accomplish this other emergency that's taken place. This demon has taken birth, and you have to take birth. You'll have to take birth in order to arrange for the killing of this demon through your son. So that's where we left off yesterday. So now the goddess will speak again. This is the second time we're here, and this is Devi Gita, means the Devi's word, the Devi song. So what her words are very important, right, and very beautiful. So this is not exactly teachings yet, right? The Devi Gita will start then properly in the next chapter, right? Where questions are asked, philosophical questions are asked in order to attain that union with her, right? The Devi will speak very beautifully, starting with clear Advaita Vedanta ontology, right? But with a Shakta and devotional interpretation slant. That will start when we get to next, soon, in a few weeks, hopefully, we'll get to the next chapter. That's the actual teachings of the Gita, but these are very beautiful words of the goddess, right? So there's no Devi Uvacha and Devuchuhu, the goddess said, and Vyasa said, or the god said. Yeah, not every verse has it. There's an implied here, so I've included it in parentheses. I think the translator did that also in parentheses. Vyasa continued, or the goddess spoke, although it's not there in the text itself. Right? Iti teṣāṃ vacham śrutvā provāca parameśvarī. So Vyasa, the narrator, is speaking, right? The supreme ruler, parameśvarī. The supreme ruler listened to these words of theirs and gave reply. So iti teṣāṃ vachah. Iti means thus, right? But often it means somebody else is speaking. It almost works as quotation marks. Thus having said this, thus somebody speaks. Having thus spoken, or this, and she speaks, or he speaks, like that. But it literally means thus. We can say thus the supreme ruler listened, or just indicating the next speaker, often in this case, right? Thus,
Guruji, can you share the screen so we could see the?
I don't have a share screen.
No, it was before, and then or am I, or something's wrong with mine?
Okay, let's try this again. Sorry. Is that there?
It's working here.
Yes,
it's good. Is it okay?
It's good now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, I don't want to. I'm assuming everybody's seeing what I'm seeing. That is a big problem in human behavior. We assume people see what we see. That's for a different class. Iti teṣāṃ vachah. Right. Thus, their words, hearing the words of all, śrutvā, hearing the words vacha of all of them, the gods, right? Provāca parameśvarī, the goddess, provāca, the goddess, replied, parameśvarī, supreme goddess, right? This parameśvarī is very important because who's speaking? Of course, we can glorify any goddess as parameśvarī, right? But parameśvarī is being used very actually almost every one of these verses that we've talked the last few weeks. This little section has maheshwarī, parameśvarī, bhuvaneshwarī, right? Showing who she is. She is the supreme. She's the supreme. She's the highest conception, the highest manifestation, the highest aspect of the supreme reality, right? She's the supreme controller. Here's parameśvarī. She's bhūvādyuṣmā-kamādarāt, the ruler of the universe, right? Maheshwarī, the great controller, the great ruler, the great queen, like this. So it's very important. This, I think, it's the word here, the name here is to remind us who's speaking, right? That she's a supreme, and she's described herself already. She is the Atman. She is Brahman. Her aspect, she's become everything as the world and all living beings, right? Atman, Jiva, and Jagat, we would say probably philosophically, Jiva, Jagat, right? She's also the reality known as Brahman in the Upanishads and Advaita Vedanta, right? And she's also has a name and a form. There's a personal deity. She is also the personal deity, parameśvarī, bhūvādyuṣmā-kamādarāt, right? And we have to remember that as we look at the next her response, right? Actually, in the very same verse, her response. Now the goddess spoke. Of course, there's no Devi Uvacha, Devi Uvacha, Devi Uchu, or something like that. The goddess spoke. Mama śaktistu ya gaurī bhaviṣyati himālaye. Mama Shaktihi. So actually, this Mama Śaktistu is due to Sandhi. It's actually Mama Shaktihi tu, right? So Shaktitu means Shakti means energy, right? We know Shakti, energy, and tu is like indeed, right? So indeed, what will happen? My Mama, my energy, my energy, which he and the term itself, śaktistu, means, by the combination, it means, energy indeed, right? Something like that. But it's come to you, it's used as potency. So my energy, like one of my qualities, my strength, my potency, my energy, right? An aspect of my, not me myself, my energy is coming, right? This is what she's describing. It's important, right? I think it's important. My potency, my Shakti, right? Ya Gauri. She who is known as Gauri, right? Bhaviṣyati, it will be what will happen, and we take birth as in Himalayas, right? She'll take birth in Himalayas. So indeed, my potency, who is Gauri, will be born to the Himalaya. So in the scene, in the story, the gods have gathered, right, in the Himalayas, right? So that's the Himalayas all over. They've gone to the high peak, a secret place in the Himalayas to perform their austerity, right? But the Himalaya is also not just a mountain. The Himalaya is the Lord of mountains, right? Not only, and we say the Lord of mountains, oh, the greatest of all mountains is the Lord of mountains. We can say it like that, right? As a glorification like that. But it's also the Lord of mountains, as he is like the king of the mountain, right? The deity of the mountain, the mountain personified, right? So Himalaya is not just a mountain; it's also a deity, the person, right? Himalaya, right? So we know what's going to happen. We know the story, how Kartikeya gets born. First, Shakti is born as Parvati, right? And or here as Gauri. So the deity, and marries Shiva. So we think, who's Shiva's wife, right? In her previous incarnation, it was she came as Sati. We talked a lot about Sati, right? And now she's going to come as Parvati. So there's many names: Parvati, Uma, and actually the three most common we'll focus on is Parvati, Uma, and Gauri, right? Parvati, Parvat means mountain also. So by saying Parvati means she who is from the mountain's daughter, right? Is she who comes from them. So that's a name that means Parvati. Also during Navaratri, we worship Shailiputri. Shaila means stone. she who is born from the stone, or she who is born from the mountain, another name for Parvati, right? Gauri. So Gauri means golden. It means light colored, right? Golden or luminous, shining. It has those type of meanings. So there's ancient stories, and once these names come and epithets come, and maybe even originally different deities, different goddesses got combined. I don't exactly know how Gauri and Parvati, if they're originally different goddesses that got identified with each other or merged with each other, that I don't have enough, not fresh in my mind to say like that, but it could have been like that also. But once the names get known, right, stories their backstories are filled in. So in this version, there's no backstory, right? So like in the Kalika Purana, right, Parvati, right, the goddess of the daughter of the mountain, who marries Shiva, she's known as Kali. That's the word Kalika Purana. It's not necessarily the Kalika Purana as in Kali, the way we think of her as goddess Kalika with a lolling tongue, holding a sword and a severed head, although that form appears in the text itself, right? It's just an epithet of Parvati, right? Kali means dark, right? She's born from the mountain. She's a dark complexion goddess, right? And there's some strange leelas where she then manifests as Gauri and is in a light color, or golden color. So I've chosen a picture just to emphasize this beautiful picture of Bhuvaneshwari as a light-colored deity, right? Gauri colored. So my potency as Gauri, with Ma has the Bhuvaneshwari, supreme goddess, has unlimited potencies. Sarva Shakti Maya is one of her names. She who has unlimited powers, Ananta Shakti, unlimited various Shaktis, right? So she's not saying, I will be born as Parvati, I will be born as Gauri, right? She's saying, my energy will be born as Gauri and will marry Shiva and have a son, will kill Tarakasura, and all the nice stories that happen. She doesn't say, I will take birth in this verse. She's going to say something like that in a couple verses soon, but that, I think, is a mysterious something we have to underline and question, right? She's not taking birth because she's not anyone's wife, right? This is an important theological development or of this text of the goddess here, right? And I've quoted it many times. I think even, I don't have my Devi Gita with me. I think even in these verses, I think at the end of one of the footnotes to these verses, section of verses, C. Mackenzie Brown even quotes the title of a book, which I'm forgetting the author, but it's the title. It's a book on the Devi Mahatmyam, on the Chandi, right? But the title is the winning title. It's like I love this, and I mention it every year during Navarat. Every time I speak on the Chandi, we always point out the title is a great name. It says the Shakti of all and the spouse of none. The spouse of no one, or the spouse, I think it's the spouse of none, the Shakti of all. Something like the name of the book, right? By a scholar whom I'm forgetting, embarrassingly enough. Because that's part of the development of this form of Shaktism, right? That she's not the one we're worshiping. The one that we're dealing with in these verses is the Mahadevi, right? This the great goddess, the parameśvarī, the supreme goddess, not just a goddess, right? There are many goddesses. There's millions of goddesses, right? There's many, and there's many forms. There may be millions of independent goddesses, and there's also millions unlimited aspects of the goddess, right? But here, the goddess, the great goddess, is known as Bhuvaneshwari. She is the Shakti. Everything is her Shakti. Without her, nothing can move. She is the ontological reality. She's existence itself, right? Without her, there's no existence. We cannot exist without her existence, right? And without her, nothing moves, right? Nothing manifests. Nothing. So she's our Shakti also, right? So you can see she's our Shakti, but you can't say, oh, because her Shakti is my Shakti, I'm the supreme goddess of the universe. That would be a ridiculous thing to say, right? I know people who've said such things. My normal response is, wow, that's a ridiculous thing to say, right? Right, right. Even if it's true, I doubt it's true, but it is true, but not really true, but it's true, but not really true. You can see how we take it, right? Right. One of my, I won't say that actually. So I'll edit my comments and commentary. I'll stick to commentary, not comments. So I'll be careful. But she's also the wife of Shiva, and she's also the wife of Vishnu, and she's also the wife of Brahma, right? And we see there's Gauri and Shankara, Shiva and Parvati, right? Mr. and Mrs. God, right? We have Lakshmi Narayan, right? We have Saraswati Brahma. Usually in popular religion, Brahma is considered connected to Saraswati, right? And so in the Chandi, that is the Devi Mahatmyam. So my shortcut to the Devi Mahatmyam is the Chandi. Not everybody knows it by that name. In the Chandi, there's a very important scene where from the Devi comes all these different goddesses from her body, from Ambika's body, the Divine Mother's body, Supreme Goddess in the Chandi, Ambika, they're known as Ambika, manifest. And the forms are Shankari or Maheshwari, right? Shiva, and Vaishnavi, and Indrani, and Narashinghi, and Varahi, right? Brahmi. And so Narashinghi, well, that could be, that's the energy of Narashingha, right? Or you could say, or Narashingha's wife is Narashingha. One say you could describe Narashingha's wife as Narashinghi, and Vishnu's wife is Vaishnavi, right? And Shiva's wife is Maheshwari or Shankari, like this, right? And actually that is the name of Shiva's wife and Vishnu's wife and Narashingha's wife, right? But what appears on the battlefield is like when it says Narashingha's wife is Lakshmi, right? But Lakshmi does not appear on the battlefield. A female form with a lion's head appears on the battlefield, right? When Shankari appears or Maheshwari appears on the battlefield in the Chandi, it's not Parvati, right? It was a female form that looks just like Shiva, that rides a bull, holds a trishul, wears a tiger skin. When Brahmi appears on the battlefield, it's not Saraswati appearing on the battlefield. It's a female form that's dressed and that's dressed like, has all the symbols, where carries a water pot like Lord Brahma, carries a switch of a kusha grass switch like Lord Brahma, rides a hamsa, a swan like Lord Brahma, right? So they're not exactly the wives of the deities, although all those deities in the classical stories and in their worship have spouses, right? But the point here is that this is their Shakti. This is their power, right? Not their wife. Of course, who is their wife? Their wife is also a manifestation of that Shakti, right? Right. So in the story, we have to understand that too. But it's emphasized, right? Not just that the supportive wife, right? Here it's been emphasized she's the Shakti. She's their very energy. So Gauri will become the wife of Shiva, right? But who is she? She's the one who serves us, who fulfills the function of Shiva's wife, right? Is an aspect of that great goddess who all her energies are doing everything, right? It's important, I think, right? Because here she says, my energy, my potency, known as Gauri, what is it? My potency, who is Gauri, right, will be born to the Himalayas, right? That means when that happens, it's not like Bhuvaneshwari is no longer in the Navadvip, in the Manidvip. She Manidvip Vasini, she exists eternally in the jeweled island, right? We talked about her highest heaven. So when she goes to get married to Shiva, right, that means her throne is nobody's sitting on the throne right now, because she's left her queendom and gone to Shiva's house, right? She's also described as sitting in the hearts of all living beings, right? When she goes to marry Shiva, it's not like she's no longer in our heart anymore, or she's no longer in the world anymore. She's no longer the foundation of reality anymore. She's no longer in her heaven anymore. She's no longer bhūvānyashvārī with that particular form, right? That particular form remains untouched, right? And that's the theology behind it. She remains supreme, bhūvānyashvārī. Here the supreme goddess is bhūvānyashvārī. She remains supreme, and she remains transcendent, right? And transcendent means other here, not only transcendent as better, higher, right, but transcendent as other, right? She is both, it's her energy, but she's still other. How to describe it? Like this, I'll give the example that many commentaries will give, is like the sun and sun rays, right? The rays of the sun come from the sun, right? They're sun rays, they come from the sun. It's the sun's energy that becomes sun rays, right? The heat and light that comes from the sun, right? And the sun rays are nothing but the sun, right? But they're not the sun. If the sun, the sun rays enter your room, right? You go, oh, the sun's in my room. If the sun itself was in your room, the room would melt and you'd melt along with it, right? Right. But it's the sun, right? So it's like it doesn't change the sun. So you can think of this one way, and there's many ways of interpreting this Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnapurnam, this first verse of the Shanti mantra of the Ishopanishad, right? From the full comes the full, leaving the full, right? The Shakti comes from the source remains, right? And that doesn't change itself. She remains supreme, she remains full, complete, and transcendent, right? So actually, I don't have my book with me, but I believe that Nilakanta, the famous commentator on this text, right, he describes this line as that this is one of Devi's avatars, right? So, and usually we think of avatars a little differently. We think, the avatar theory, right, is usually associated with Vishnu, right, who takes Leela avatars, guna, in order to accomplish some task. Vishnu as the sustainer, right, will have to intercede in his to create. There's a couple different views, as many different views of avatar. That's the topic I'm interested in. But I'll just in a simple way that whenever there's emergency, in order to protect the creation, protect the devotees, right, protect saintly people, to protect dharma, or to protect the world, because he's the sustainer of the world as well as the sustainer of the bhaktas and sustainers of dharma. He will even take physical or incarnation, right? He descends into a body or takes on a form, manifests a form in order to accomplish that task, killing a demon or something, rescuing somebody like this, right? General view of the avatars, there's sweet versions of that also, in order to reciprocate lovingly with devotees also, as sometimes he takes form, he takes his incarnation, right? So usually we think of avatars, or the avatar is almost always connected to Vishnu, right? A Vishnu takes incarnation, right? But the word avatar is used for other deities also, right? And so even in the Chandi, at the end of the Chandi, when the Surata and Samadhi are praying, and she's giving boons at the end of the whole thing, is one of the boons she gives, that in the future I will take avatars, I will take form, I will take birth, and I will take form, right, in various bodies, right, in different. So maybe it's not necessarily like taking birth in somebody's womb, right? Sometime, or I'll assume forms, and then she lists a bunch of future avatars, right, that she will take, right? She'll kill a demon called Durgama and become known as Durgama, right? There'll be a time when the world is nothing grows on the earth, and so she'll take a form called Shakambari, where her body will become full of nutrients and vegetables and feed the world like this. So she gives a bunch of lists like that. And some scholars have tried to find which one each one of these reference, which one of her promises refers to which story, right? So their avatar doesn't necessarily mean she takes on a human body. We think like Vishnu becomes a human, like Krishna or Rama, like that. But it just takes on a form, like Narasingha or Varahi. It takes to manifest a form, born or not born. He's born in the world in the sense of taking a form, right? Entering the world, right, in order to accomplish something. So here the goddess, is saying she'll do the same thing. In the Chandi, the goddess does the same thing. And Nilakanta glosses this term, I will be born into Himalayas, and she'll become an avatar, right? So that means Gauri or Parvati in this version of the story is not the supreme goddess. She is a supreme goddess, but she's an avatar of the supreme goddess, right? And then it's mysterious. Can there be more than one avatar? There's a very interesting scenes in the Ramayana. We think of Lord Ram to be the avatar of Lord Vishnu in the general understanding of the general reading of the Ramayana story. But there's a scene where he meets Parashuram, who also is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, right? So Parashuram is the angry, militant form called Parashuram, means he who holds an axe. And Lord Rama, as in Sita Ram, is known as Kodandaram, he holds a bow. So two different Ramas, right? Not only do they meet each other, two avatars meet each other as per the story and traditional understanding, interpretation of the story, they actually fight, not exactly fight. Parashuram wants to fight, right? And Kodandarama, Lord Rama, calms them down and doesn't fight. So it's a very interesting thing. So that these are the idea that there's unlimited shaktis coming from the Supreme, right? And can play all these parts. And in one sense, this is a very real sense, right? But take a little bit more cosmically and universally, it's like she's also become the entire universe and all living beings in it, right? And so she's become you and me in some sense, right? And we may or may not like each other, get along, agree with each other and everything, but she's playing both the parts, perhaps, right? This is in some sense, right? So Sri Ramakrishna said that the avatar is only of Shakti. This is a direct line. So what is born, what takes birth, or what manifests as an avatar is Shakti, the Shakti of the Absolute. And Swami Vivekananda, a little controversial, he was a poking type of verse, but very strong Shakta interpretation. He quotes a line from a late Tantra, I believe, right? Where he says, a drop of Kali comes down as Rama, a drop of Kali comes down as Krishna, right? So, of course, devotees of Rama and Krishna and Vaishnava tradition may not appreciate this interpretation, right? That may be why he said it. He may be trying to give some challenge to standard interpretations or dominant interpretations, right? But the idea that the drop of that Divine Mother comes not only as the avatars of the Divine Mother, like here as Uma and as Gauri, Parvati, right? But even as Rama, Krishna, Kurma, Narasingha, right? As avatars also of Shakti. She's the one that's manifesting, right? It's an interesting idea. This is a Shakta text, so this is a Shakta interpretation of a Shakta text. So, Mama śaktistu, my potency will take birth, not I will take birth. That's what we take from that. Let's look at the next verse. Okay. Verse 64. Śivāya sa pradeyā syāt sava kāryaṃ vidhāsyati. We'll start with that. So it says śivāya sa pradeyā. Śivāya sa pradeyā. So she, now who's talking? Bhuvaneshwari is talking. And she doesn't say here, I will be given in marriage. She's the sa, she refers to somebody else besides her Shakti, known as Gauri. My Shakti, my potency, Gauri, will be given in marriage to Shiva. Pradeyā means given in marriage, right? Pradeyā. Syāt kāryaṃ vidhāsyati. And she actually kāryaṃ kāryaṃ is like what needs to be done. I think this is a very Indian thing. It's interesting. I heard a radio program where they're talking about language, the change of language. I don't know if you've heard on NPR, there's like way with words or something. Where they talk about the source of language. People call in up questions about language, and somebody called in because of Indians in the workforce. Right? He says, my boss told me to do the needful. And I've never heard that term before. So I've heard it all. I hear it all the time. People do that. And it's a very Indian saying, do the needful. Right. And even, some Swami calls me, says, Swamiji, I need, it's like there's such a thick and thick. Please do the needful. That, get it done. You have to do whatever needs to be done. Right. This is like kind of this kāryaṃ idea. So she, my Shakti, not I, she, my Shakti, known as Gauri, will be given in marriage to Shiva. I've given a little photograph, a little painting, a beautiful painting of the marriage from a series of paintings on the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. Right, and will furnish what you need. She'll do the needful. Now, do the needful here means have a child, right? And the child, she'll take birth. She'll be given in Shiva. She'll have the required child, who will become known as Kartikeya, Skanda, who will, and within first week of his life, be able to kill Taraka, as per the story at hand. The other version of the story, he, as a teenager, becomes the general of the army of gods, and then there's versions of the story. The version of the story that this is within, as a young child, as an infant, he'll have to kill Tarakasura. He'll do the needful. So remember the question, they asked two things. They asked two boons, the primary boon and the secondary boon, right? Our foremost wish, may we always show unswerving devotion to you, to your lotus feet. And the second wish, may you assume a body in order to marry Shiva, in order to give birth to Kartikeya, so that he will do the needful, right? So two prayers, right? So now she's answering, she's giving the boon of these two prayers. Remember, she is a wish-fulfilling tree, right? So I will arrange that my energy, Gauri, will be born as will take birth to him. What is that? To Himalayas, right? Be born to Himalaya. We'll go into that in the next verse also. We'll check something real quick. Yeah, okay. Right. So my Shakti, answer the second question, or the second boon, may you take a body. One of my Shakti will take a body, marry Shiva, and do the needful. To the first question, may we always be devoted to your lotus feet. Remember, our primary desire, right? We talked a lot about that last week. What is our primary desire, right? So this is her answer to the primary desire. You shall be devoted to my lotus feet due to your earnest desire. Right, you had your big desire is to be, and actually the exact word she's repeating almost word for word. Go back to that here. Sarvada charanambhoje, lotus feet, right? So here also she uses, there's many ways to say lotus feet. She repeats almost the same language. You'll be, sorry, it's lost there because of the sandhi. This becomes the whole second line becomes two words. I've only put a dash in there where I could help you see one of the words. So let's pull this apart so you can see it in the second line here. Bhaktihi yat charana ambhoje bhūyādyuṣmā-kamādarāt. Right. So bhaktiryaccaraṇāmbhoje. Sorry, my tongue is not working. You will have devotion, bhaktir, to my lotus feet. Right. bhūyādyuṣmā-kamādarāt. Because this is, I'm responding to all of your deep desire, your earnest desire, this kamādarāt, get the long A in the right place, kamādarāt, right? Your kama means desire, kamādarāt means your deep desire, your respectful, your profound desire, earnest desire, right? So that's the answer. She's promised them, she's satisfied these 2 points. They want to be devoted to her lotus feet, and she needs to take a body to marry Shiva. So this is the answer is tadastu, may it be so. Right? She's answering their prayers in the affirmative. My Shakti Gauri will be born to Himalayas, marry Shiva, and accomplish what you want. And you will be born because you should be devoted to my lotus feet because that's what you really want. Right? Remember what we talked about last week, is what do we really want? We want many things, right? But the question is, what do we really want? So final verse that we'll talk about tonight, I thought this would be a good place to stop, because then the next will be the Lord Himalaya will respond to this profound realization is going to be born in your home, right? So she's still speaking. Himālayo hi manasa mam upaste thi bhaktitaha. So why remember, because please, they asked her, please you'll have to take a body, right? And then she gives a unique thing. Not only will I take a body, I'm going to be born. Himalaya is the one speaking in the foremost of the gods here, right? He's the one who kind of representing the gods. Is the Himalayas is the primary one speaking, and so he says, not only will I be born, I'm going to be born in your house, right? I'm going to be born to you, and of course it's born Himalayas. So it's interesting, because I was actually thinking like that. Actually, he's not born. Himalaya doesn't give birth to her. Himalaya has a wife, also in the story, who gives birth to Parvati, right? It's embarrassing. Anybody remember Himalaya's wife's name? Himayavati, is that it? Or I'm trying to remember. Embarrassing. Anyways, Himalaya has her wife. I'm just trying to remember my 7,000 volumes episodes of Devankidev Mahadev, where we have many of her stories. I'm just forgetting just now. It may come to me. But also we have to, because this text will have a lot of yogic, tantric and yogic symbolism and teachings in it about Kundalini and about prana, things like that. So I think there's an idea here also. It's not just, Himalaya, who's also a person, has a wife, and his wife will give birth to Parvati, and then they'll raise her the little daughter, and then eventually she'll want to marry Shiva and do austerities and then marry Shiva. There's leelas like that. There's stories like that. Puranas are full of these type of stories, right? I'm not denying those stories, right? But symbolically, she's born to the Himalayas, meaning born Parvati, born from the mountain, Shalaputri, the daughter of the mountain, right? That has been given or been interpreted to be also a symbol of Kundalini, that within this body is like a mountain. This body is inert like a mountain, right? This body is, but within it there's Shakti, right? Here we are shining through this mountain, right? What is that Shakti? That is her Shakti, right? But with it, so even us moving is her in our body, right? We have the next, when Himalaya will eventually speak, we'll probably get to that next week, he'll say, how can you be born in an inert object, right? He says, I'm inert, I'm a mountain, I'm inert, I'm a mountain, but yet you'll be born in me. How is this possible? Here, this is our reality right now. We have an inert physical body that's animated because of Shakti, because of her Shakti. So that's one way we can understand it. But of course, there's a more profound, when she's really born, there's many ways to interpret it. One is that from the Kundalini aspect, there was the awakening of Kundalini, then she's born out of the body. And that's seen in the Chandi where the gods are praying, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, right? And then she appears as Parvati, describes her as Parvati, sitting on the bank of the river, right? And she asks, taking a bath in the river and sitting on the bank of the river, and she asks, oh gods, who are you praying to? He says, you're praying to me. I am that goddess who exists within all beings. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu, the God that exists in all beings as consciousness, as everything. And then she says, out of it, so already she's a consciousness of all beings, right, within the body of all beings. But then out of her comes another form. She's Parvati, and out of Parvati comes, and so I think she's given the name Kaushiki, right? That she who is born comes out of the sheath, like a sword coming out of a holder, right? So something out of the body comes up, and that becomes Ambika, Kali, Durga, who fights the great demons, right, and satisfies the gods in order to save the gods, and she fights the demons. That's been interpreted by many yogis as the awakening of Kundalini. Like when Parvati comes out of the Himalayas, is that type of thing. So there may be hints of that there too, by in this verse, right? But I think there's another. So she's the energy within the body. She's Kundalini, when awakens, comes out of the body, right? Born within the body, right? So as she's our own consciousness, she's the super consciousness that comes out of the body, the real Shakti as Kundalini. But something more. I think there is something more going on here also. Let's look at the verse again. So I'm born. So in the last verse, she says, my Shakti will be born. She will be born, right? She will be born as Gauri and accomplish what, and my Shakti will be born as Gauri in the Himalayas, and she will accomplish what you need, right? It says, but here it says, Himalaya moved by intense devotion truly worships me in his heart. Thus I consider it a pleasure. I'm jumping, I forgot to read the verse, but thus I consider it a pleasure to take birth in his home. So here, I will take birth in her home, in his home, right? Himalayo himanasa. So let's go look at the verse. Himalayo. Himalaya he. Himalayo means Himalaya. Himalaya, indeed. Manasa mam upaste. He worships me. Actually, this in his heart. So actually, upaste means to worship, and mam worships me in his heart. And here, the term for heart, he's translated as heart, is manasa, right? So we either think of manasa. There's another word for heart like hridoy, right? Hridoya, right? We have words that we'd expect to see for heart. He's using manasa, which is mind, right? So manasa, of course, this is a problem. That not all ideas translate well across cultures, right? And the psychology, the yogic psychology being described here, the Vedantic and yogic psychology, there's not like, we don't have like, oh, like, no, I can understand it in my heart, but I understand it in my mind, but it's not in my heart. That type of language, we'd use that, we'd make a separation like that. But manasa, by use, you have to know if it means mind, if it means intelligence, if it means ego, if it means heart, it means feelings, all those type of things it could mean. So here manasa means the full internal organ. This is the antarkarana, right? Within his inner being, That's a way of saying Manasa is our inner being. We would say in the Western context, we say our inner being. We usually say, oh, it's in my heart, right? Like we use that type of language. So and of course, because it's using the language of devotion, we think of devotion also as being connected with love, and love being situated somehow in the heart, right? And I think, of course, we have, by heart, we don't mean a muscle pumping blood, right? And we mean this at the center of our being, our inner core, right? So the heart, this is our inner. We think like this is our inner core. We see, like when Swami Chaitananda speaks, sometimes when he's reading something from Sri Ramakrishna, he says, "Oh, let there be no theft in the chambers of your heart." He'll point to the mind, right? Because this is the heart, right? Is this the heart? This is just a cultural, sometimes a little difference here. Anyways, don't get caught in it, but Manasa is not what we usually use for the word heart, right? But he ati bhaktitaha. He worship. Ati means very much, with a lot, right? Bhaktitaha, with devotion. So Himalaya worships me with so much devotion, right? All the gods are there. All the gods need help. They've been kicked out of heaven by Tadagasura, right? But Himalaya means being called out, right? Singled out, right? As an example, Himalaya, I'll be born in his house, right? Because he's been worshiping me with so much devotion, right? Thus, tataha tasya grihe janme mama priyankara matam. Tataha tasya grihe janme mama. Therefore, I will be born in his grihe. Grihe means home, house, right? Priyakara means it with pleasure, right? Priya means dear, pleasure, with pleasure. So I like this translation very. I consider it a pleasure to take birth in his home, in his house, right? What a beautiful line this is, I think, right? But so there's many things there. Of course, to satisfy the need of the hour, Shiva, Devi will have to take some form, marry Shiva, give birth to Kartikeya. We shouldn't forget that, right? Right. But now this verse, and actually that whole thing, the big thing, the big drama that has caused this crisis, that has caused the gods to do thousands of years of austere penance in order to get Devi's response, to ask a prayer for her, gets dealt with in a 700 verse text, 3 or 4 verses. They ask it in a verse, she responds to it in a verse and a half, right? The rest is about this other part, about how do we worship your lotus, be attached to your lotus feet? How do we not forget you? How do we merge ourselves in your inner being? These type of questions will be asked. These are the rest of the text is really about devotion and meditation and realization, right? So this verse, although it's just a few verses mentioning, I will be born to Himalayas, marry Shiva, have Kartikeya kill Tadaka, right? But even here, it's being said so sweetly. It was my pleasure to be born in his house, because he has worshipped me with pure devotion, sincere devotion in his heart, right? That's the secret, right? How intimate this is, right? It's not just, it's an emergency. We go to a higher power because we don't know what else to do, right? If you don't know what else to do, go to a higher power. That's good sense, right? We're not telling you not to do that, right? But Himalaya has not just done that. He's worshipped her not just out of fear, out of need, out of regret, out of needing a boon, right, for a blessing, for like this. He's also worshipped her with devotion in his heart, right? And therefore she's takes pleasure to be born in his home. So actually, in this, think. So she's parameśvarī. Let's look at the names that we've used for her: parameśvarī, maheshwarī, bhuvaneshwarī. These are the three big names, right? Shri Brahma, right? The supreme Brahman, also one of the words used. Shri, right? She's the goddess, right? It's controller, the supreme reality, the foundation, the source, right? And she's Ambika, she's the mother, so that's a big aspect. She's the mother, and by mother, not only we mean source and like that, and substratum, but also motherly. She's shown herself to be motherly, also the human affectionate way of a mother loving her child, son and daughter, like that, right? But she's saying, because you love me, I'll be born not as your mother, not as your goddess, not as the supreme substratum of the universe, not as your cause and foundation, but as your daughter. Right? How interesting this is. The goddess, who's the mother, will be born as, because of his devotion, will be born as his daughter. Right? And notice here, she's saying, I will be born as your daughter. And the last verse, she says, she will marry Shiva. Right? So there seems to be a little difference here. Right? Her Shakti, as Gauri, will marry Shiva. Of course, be born in Himalaya. She will be born as Himalaya and marry Shiva. But here she's something more intimate. I will be born as your daughter. Right? In this intimate relationship. Right? And of course, think about what that is. When you approach the goddess, Oh, Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Sarva Mangala Mangaye Shive Sarvartha Sadike, most auspicious of all auspicious beings, the one who creates, sustains, and destroys the universe. These are the prayers we do. Oh, save us, bless me. We go. All the prayers of God, of the goddess, are that of awe and reverence, recognizing her, and we should recognize. If you're looking for the source of all power, the source of all blessings, the source of reality, we go to God, who's the goddess, who's by definition the source of all power, reality, blessings, everything, right? Right. That's good sense. That's good theology, right? Right. But sweetness and devotion changes that. Sri Ramakrishna talked about this. In the beginning, one worships Durga with 10 arms. I just read this 2 days ago, in book 4. In volume 4, it's many times, but just in the morning I've been working through book 4 of volume 4 of the Sri Ramakrishna Katamrita, right? It really struck me. He says that he says in the beginning one sees Ma with 10 arms, Ma Durga, right? And one sees all those weapons, all that power, right? It's overwhelming. It should be overwhelming if you saw such a thing. Right? But then more intimacy, then one sees her with 2 arms, right? Or 4 arms or 2 arms. And actually in other places he says one sees like the 4-arm Vishnu, something like that. But in this particular occasion, in the 4th volume, he says one sees a 2-arm form. And I was thinking, who's the 2-arm form is like Parvati, Sati, like this, so she's beautiful goddess, but she's a mother, she's a goddess, like that, right? But still the goddess, right? But then so you don't see that power, right? You see her more personally as a person, right? But then she becomes, when our intimacy and love becomes greater, the consciousness of her power and her might and power become less due to our love. We ignore her power. And so Sri Ramakrishna said, then she becomes like Gopala, like baby Krishna. Right? That's the standard. That's the most common way we think of thinking of God as child, right? And so Vivekananda, he says in one place in the Bhakti Yoga, he says, usually we kneel at the feet of the goddess, and look up at the goddess or God, right? But look at Yashoda. She kneels over the God or over the goddess, right? She's not conscious of God's power, right? Actually, God covers her power or his power, right? We only love, right? And so a mother isn't necessarily conscious of the power of the baby. She's conscious of, oh, I have to serve the power. The baby has no power. I have to do everything for it. And that's that's called seva. That's called devotion. I will do everything. I will do anything. You'll do everything for the child. You'll do anything for the child. Right? This is the nature. Right? And so that's a very pure love. Right? Not just I will serve in order to get blessings. Right? I will serve because she's so powerful, because she's God and all that, right? So this is very sweet. So because of his love, not focus only on blessings and on getting something, or because he's all powerful, because of real love, that love covers the awe and reverence, the power and glory and power of God, and one sees God intimately, humanly, even more than humanly, right? Should mourn not just in your house, but as your daughter, your own daughter. So these two prayers, I want highest devotion, grant us devotion, grant us unflinching devotion. Let's get the words right. Unflinching devotion to your lotus feet, and you have to take birth so that Tarakasura will be killed, right? In this one scene, right, in these words of the goddess, both these prayers are being answered, right? She'll be born through her Shakti will be born and kill Tarakasura, right? Or marry Shiva and have her son will kill Tarakasura, right? Gauri will be born, right? She will be born, or Ma says she will be born, Shakti will be born, right? And she says, I will be born. Of course, Gauri is nothing but her. In one sense, we're nothing but her either. But I don't think it's meant just like that, right? Right. In this particular case, she's also, because of the intimacy, it's like two births in one, right? Gauri and Bhuvaneshwari. Of course, Gauri is only Bhuvaneshwari, right? But last week we mentioned, Swami Bhajanananda mentioned the two birds in the Upanishads, right? Maybe it's something like that also. These two birds, even in the Devi, there's two birds, one that does things and one that simply, the supreme goddess is also there also, right? She never lose. So her Shakti is there, but she also is there covering all of her glory due to that sweet intimacy. So in the Sri Ramakrishna would quote, he'd say, I think he's quoting from a song or a verse or something like that. Maybe Ambika may know, but he would say that enmeshed, I think it's a song, enmeshed in the elements, encased in the elements, Brahman weeps, right? Brahman weeps and wails. So he says that, like, when he described that of himself as like, why am I suffering? Or, it's like that when taking a human body, even the human things happen, right? Brahman taking on a human form, right, behaves like a human, right? And so, but Brahman, while taking on a human form, behaves like a human, never stops being the transcendent, right? So Brahman, encased in flesh, Brahman weeps, and she remains untouched. She remains Bhuvaneshwari. She enters relationship. She remains a supreme goddess. She becomes super intimate with her devotee, right? Being born in her home. I mean, just idea of her being born as your child, how wonderful. But I think it's so much more than being born in your house, being born in your life, being born in your heart. The house. What is house and what is home? The birth of the goddess within us is something, right? Yet she remains as Bhuvaneshwari. Her energy does the work necessary, accomplishes what needs to be done. We have that super intimate internal realization and relationship with her, and she remains Bhuvaneshwari, supreme. Look at the verse again. I'm going to go back and read the three verses just to get a flavor for them. Starting with their prayer. I'm going to start reading at verse 62. May we always, the gods speak, may we always show unswerving devotion to your lotus feet. This is our foremost wish. We also pray that you will assume a body. Vyasa continued. The supreme ruler listened to these words of theirs and gave reply. The goddess spoke. My potency, who is Gauri, will be born to Himalaya. She will be given in marriage to Shiva and will furnish what you need. You shall be devoted to my lotus feet due to your earnest desire. Himalaya, moved by intense devotion, truly worships me in his heart. Thus I consider it a pleasure to take birth in his house. So we'll leave it there. We'll stop there tonight. Are there any comments or questions or realizations or observations?
Elijah.
Elijah.
Daima. Okay, so I had a thought about the life of Ram Prasad when you were talking about the goddess. Oh, sorry about the dog. I had a thought about Ram Prasad and his family when you were talking about the goddess being born in Himalaya's home. And the story goes somewhat like this, that Ram Prasad was out working in the field, putting up posts, and he asked his daughter to help, right? And she was going to help, but then she went inside for a bit, and all of a sudden his daughter comes right back. And he was like, I thought you had to go, do your thing. And she comes back and helps him put it up, and they get it done in no time. And then comes back to the house. He comes back to the house, I think, and his daughter says something like, was about to come and help you, right? And then he had the realization that no, it was the Divine Mother, was Kali, who came before me and helped. How foolish I was that I didn't see her living form right in front of me. Right. And he then writes a whole song about it. I don't know the song.
Actually,
but I remember it from Usha's book is why.
It mentioned, yes, and Usha gives a nice chapter on Ram Prasad.
And then I had one question too. So somebody that was somewhat confiding in me recently about their sadhana had asked if about nama japa and stuff. And they were going to try and do like a 40-day sadhana of just repeating Lalita's name. But then some things happened. He was originally attracted to Bhuvaneshwari Devi. Attraction for Lalita came. And then all of a sudden it switched in his mind because he had ordered a photo of Lalita that actually ended up being Bhuvaneshwari that was sent. So it was Bhuvaneshwari's feel like, no. So he decided he wants to do nama japa of her name. And I was just wondering, is there a very simple, not like a pranam mantra, but just a short mantra that could be recited by him for his?
I'll send you an email.
Okay.
And send you some sloka or something. There's some slokas, maybe even from this text. I have to look, but
Okay.
there are some slokas that are simple thing that can be said to invoke her and praise her. Right. For sure. About Ram Prasad having that vision, right? Of course, and how fool I didn't see her living form, but he did see her living form. That's the amazing thing. He didn't see the living form with a severed head and a sword, right? But she took such an intimate form, right? As his daughter. You can't get more intimate than your own daughter, right? And then and also then she's assisting him. She the mother is, anyways, that very within that, when God comes and does menial help to help you, right? There's many stories like that in the scriptures and the lives of the saints where we see this a lot. Sri Ramakrishna had many of these type of experiences where he said, oh, God came to me in the form of a little girl, or God came to me, it's like not like in a vision. No, a little girl came and told me this or did this something. And so maybe it was just a little girl and he saw it as God, or maybe it was God. like the mother came in this form, right? Or maybe that's the same thing, right? And it's hard for us to understand the experiences and language of the Greek ones. They're describing a realm of experience so different than common language. So it's very hard to understand, but very beautiful. Thank you.
Reminds me to mention this hymn for the 30,000th time in this course, or in courses here in general, like the Kalika Ashtakam, where it describes like you're neither the maiden nor the little girl nor the old woman, right? Like we can't describe you, right?
Yeah, that's it, because
He's all of
so many
those things and none of
yeah.
those things.
Yeah, that's a beautiful verse of the Kalikastakam, where, because usually we say, oh, you are, and there's many verses. We've talked about the verses maybe even in this class, right? You are the little girl, you are the maiden, you are the young woman, right? And this verse says, but you're not the little girl, you're not the maiden, you're not the old woman, right? You know, so what you are can't be. So she both is and isn't, right? But she also remains, and there's many ways to understand that, but I think a lot of it is the main way when I think whenever I those verses, recite those verses occasionally, I think that she remains always independent also. She's Bhuvaneshwari. She's everything we see, but she's not only what we see. And so maybe we can use a little bit to put that into a theological category, right? Like pantheism, where everything's within God, but God is still greater than everything we see, right? Something like that, perhaps, right? Swami Ambikananda, you have any comment on this verse, because you know this verse better than I do?
Well, yeah, it does stand out, because in so many other verses it always said, oh, you, Divine Mother, you come in this form. She is obviously in the form. Thakur himself said that she, all women are Brahmamayi's anga, her limbs, her parts of her. But this, again, like you said it very beautifully, Guruji, that she's, but what did you say? She's in everything, but not only in everything.
Yeah.
She's independent. And I think this verse, I think you're right, Guruji. I think this verse, at least on one level, who can say there's so many levels, but I think on one level, it's recognizing that, like you said, she is and she isn't. She's also independent of that. I think in the first part of that verse is, through your power of yoga, you have saved so many forms, so many strange forms. So the multiplicity of all forms. But so she is all those forms, but by being all of them, she's beyond all of them. She's not just them. So it's very beautiful verse.
And what's the refrain? Because in fact, I was just thinking, well, we can't fully understand that, but I go, yeah, what's the refrain?
So rupam turiyam navendanti devaha. So what your real nature is, even the gods do not understand.
Yeah, this is a beautiful. I love this line. You know, what your real nature is, even the gods cannot understand. Right. So we should be very humble when we start making statements about her nature. Right. Except statements like, what your nature is, even the gods can't understand. That is a safe statement. Right. I get nervous when people make conclusive, authoritative statements about what God is. Right. Right. This is like the perfect verse, you know. And if you don't know this hymn, there's a Kalikastakam, right? Kalikastakam, attributed to Shankara, most likely not written by Shankara, but attributed to Adi Shankara. There's partially because of the particular meter that's in many hymns attributed to him are in that meter. It's one of the reasons why it's connected to him. A very beautiful, mysterious verse. Slokas, very beautiful. It starts with a Dhyan mantra describing Kali, the classic form Kali in the cremation ground, and then describes her in very mysterious, wonderful ways. Yeah,
it's quite beautiful too. You say it's humbling that, you know, we can't understand her, but it's also kind of hopeful.
yes,
because you can't understand her, because she's beyond all that, that means she is more than we could possibly know.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, which gives us hope that, like, okay, well, if she's
So
beyond that,
it's not that she
all these
can't be
other-
known.
yeah,
We can't be completely known.
beyond what we can understand.
Yeah. So Sri Ramakrishna, in his wonderful language, he described, right? We don't need to know how much alcohol is in every tavern, in every bar, and every drugstore, right? One bottle is enough to get us drunk, right? So one bottle is all you need. You don't need to know how much, all the details of all the wine in every drugstore, right? One wine is sufficient for us, right? So it's not that we're not supposed to just surrender to the fact that God remains ever the unknown, the transcendent unknown, some Kantian principle or something like this, right? Right. In one sense, God is always unknown, but God can also be intimately known, right? As daughter, as child, as friend, as lover, as mother, as father, right? As supreme reality, as peace, as bliss, as joy, as being, right? And having that knowledge and that experience, to use Thakur's example of drinking one bottle of wine sufficient for us, is enough to make us intoxicated, to make us happy, right? To make us blissful, right? So can be known, and to know, and then not only did he say that Sri Ramakrishna say that God can be known, the goddess can be known. She said that to know her, to know him, to know it is the purpose of life, right? And these verses, the gods would say, this is our foremost desire, our foremost wish, right? So that is from Sakura said, this is the purpose of our life, right? And we need to awaken to that. When that becomes our foremost desire, she cannot but respond, right? So she can be known, right? But she always remains also unknown. Hari Om. Thank you. Any other comments?
Oh, Ranmali,
Ranmali.
you had a question, Ranmali Ma?
I do have a question, Jaima. You know, when we were talking about Ma Parvati, she's born to Himalaya, in the house of Himalaya. And then Gauri, Parvati's then essence or aspect, then marries Shiva and gives birth to Skanda, Murugan, Kartikeya, right? So I can't say I'm extremely familiar with it, but because we celebrate Thaipusam, right? And because my family lineage, we are Murugan Skanda devotees, right? And so Vel Ayudham, right? In the Skanda Purana, Murugan's Vel Ayudham, Parvati gives Murugan the Vel Ayudham, right?
This is his spear, his weapon.
His spear. And so it is
By
not
which he kills
only
Tadakasura. So this is the whole point.
right. So the spear, it's not only just Kartikeya as this the warrior, right? The Veera that is born to Shiva Parvati, but also it's Parvati when she gives the Vel Ayudham to Murugan. The Vel Ayudham has her essence. It's the essence. So when I say the 108 names of Murugan, or we celebrate, Vel, we are, yes, of course, we see the Ayudham as no different from Murugan, but also the Ayudham as the essence of Shakti.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really, and then, so this is and this is the Skanda Purana, right? And I think that's really beautiful because Kartikeya is not only born out of this divine union as the Veera, the warrior, but also it is she who gives the weapon to and bestows upon that weapon the Shakti to kill Tarakasura, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what came up, and maybe I don't know how that kind of meshes with what we are reading.
Well, I think, well, in that story that the veil is, we worship, like, actually, if maybe people know, maybe don't know, but Skanda can be worshipped just through his veil also.
Yeah.
Like we have a beautiful murti of Kartikeya with a beautiful veil, right? South Indian, we've gotten something, but actually on the shrine itself, we have a tiny little veil that's worshipped as Skanda, right? His presence there is Skanda, but it's his Shakti, right? The veil is the Shakti of Skanda, and of course the Shakti of Skanda is Devi, right? Skanda comes from Devi, and Skanda Shakti is Devi, right? And that's true of all of us. We come from Devi, and our power is from Devi, right? We can think of it external, the power we have, So that's one way we can probably think of it, that just like we are born from Devi, only from her. Our energy is her. We're born from her, right? Our reality is based upon her, but also she's she's the Shakti of all. She's all and the Shakti of all. I think we maybe switch it, that she's all and the Shakti of all. She's become all. So Sri Ramakrishna also describes that. Describes in as described it as a spider gives birth, creates a web, and then lives in the web, right? So she just says that she creates the universe and then she lives in the universe. She creates the body and lives in the body. She creates it. She creates the reality, and then she is the one embodied in the reality of that reality, something like that. But maybe that's Skanda. The veil, of course, that's a whole other flavor of devotion and a different series and cycle of myth, right? But I think that in a simple way, I think that's how I understand the veil is both Skanda and his Shakti. So Skanda comes from Devi, born from Devi, and his Shakti is Devi, right? The weapon he has is from Devi, and even in that scene from the Chandi where the gods gather and from their bodies, from their anger and desperation about this horrible demon-taken birth, their different Shaktis come and create a goddess, right? Of course, that goddess is coming. Are they creating her, or their energy? Their form is come out. She's the essence of all their form, and then they give her their weapons. It's not like, oh, good, thank you, Shiva. Without Trisha, I wouldn't be able to do anything, right? It's their weapons are her. Their ability, the power of Shiva, represented by his Trishul, is Devi's power, right? So they're recognizing this. They're giving their weapons back. Right, reckoning this is your weapon. This has always been your weapon, right? That's how that verse, that scene has been generally interpreted, right? It's her energy that there's an ancient story, like I don't know how ancient, from Purana, on Gayatri tradition. Right? I like this image is very interesting, where Gayatri, because in certain Puranas, Gayatri is supreme. She's the supreme goddess, right? So this version, Gayatri is supreme goddess. And so at the beginning of she creates, I have to create a world. I need to create the devas to fulfill my desire, right? My functions, right? So she creates Vishnu, right? Says you'll be the sustainer, right? And says, what do you need to sustain? We'll say, well, I'll need to protect the world. Right, so I think I need a gada, a club, and a disc. Okay, and then from herself, because she has all weapons, from her own weapons, she pulls a disc from her disc, and a club from her club, and gives it to him. And then Shiva says, "You will have to destroy the world, and transform things. What do you need for this?" And so I'll need a trishul, So from her own trishul, she takes her and gives him a trishul, right? She's giving the power of all the gods to do their duty, to do her functions. She creates them and gives them the power, right? And as she's giving all, and the story is very beautiful. It's actually glorifying. The story is meant to glorify not only Gayatri Devi as Jagat Mata, the mother of the world that creates all gods and gives them their functions and gives them their power, but also glorifies Lord Ganesha, not Kartikeya. So during as she's giving the different weapons and shaktis and everything to all her gods in order to do their function, she looks down and look for Ganesha. He's very important, right? He only needs certain things, right? Where is Ganesha? And he sees Ganesha massaging her feet. The whole time he's massaging her feet, not worried about that type of stuff. And so moved by this, he says, I will give you, of course, she has certain weapons that he needs in order to remove obstacles, Ganesha's function. But he says, I'll give you 5 heads, right? She gives, because Gayatri Devi has 5 heads. So she gives Ganesha her 5 heads, right? And those represent the 4 Vedas and the Upanishads, all kinds of symbolism like that. But a similar thing, I think that she gives the gods her weapons. And then the Chandi, we see the gods giving back her weapons, right? Because in this particular case, they haven't done very good use of doing it themselves, right? Maybe it's ego, and usually interpreted, the gods get a little bit egotistical, and therefore and all the demons that come up can be representatives of ego, right? And take over. And so when they realize, oh, it's you, and then she, they give her a weapon, they create, their Shakti becomes her, the weapons become her weapons, different forms, like I said, like Indrani and Maheshwari and all the Maheshi and all those, the Matrikas are their forms, but it's her, right? That's a big, that is perhaps even in the Chandi, I believe this is a solution. The spiritual crisis, whatever the spiritual crisis, the solution is recognizing her as everything and the Shakti of everything. And the final scene at the final at the moment before Shumba is destroyed, right? She says, I am the only one here, right? And then look, and everything reabsorbs into her, right? That's the punchline, right? of the whole Chandi, right? And I think this is the punchline of everything. It's only me, ultimately. So that, I think this is hint of this also. And I think the Skanda myth, the Skanda, that's how I interpret it. I think it's probably like that. It has its own flavor. It'd be wonderful to go.
Right.
And we are mostly from the Bengali tradition that doesn't know so much to do with Skanda, with Kartikeya. He shows up once a year with Durga for Durga Puja, but really in the south is where it's not only connected. Of course, it's connected to Shiva, but it's his own. He's his own. He's his own godhead. He's his own.
Right. Because we worship Murugan, and then also we have the festivals, and and his 2 consorts, Valliyamma and Devasena. And then also, if you look at Gauri and Gauri's Vahana, the mongoose, and the Saptamatrikas. So it's really it's
a wonderful other flavor of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Very good. No, it's very interesting. Thank you. Well.
Jaima. Well.
Any other comments? Or forever hold your peace. Fine, leave this until next Wednesday. Okay, I think maybe if there's nothing else, we'll end it here. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Hope everybody did okay with the rains. More rains coming. Here we had, those who know, we live by a river, and a river came up. It didn't flood, at least we didn't flood. Some parts of Laguna Canyon got flooded. The street got closed a few times last night and this morning, but no major damage as far as I can tell in our area. We have more rain coming on I think Sunday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, like that. So keep us in your prayers. Of course, who do you pray to? It's like we pray to Ma that we don't get hit by rain or something, but she's the one who sends the rain, so it's a little mysterious how that all works. Anyways, but one of the beautiful things we're really enjoying right now, those of you who live in this area, everything's green and moist and foggy. It's like I felt like this morning I was talking, we had to drive to Usha and myself went to Home Depot to pick up plants like that, and just driving through mist, and it felt like we're like, I don't know, like in Assam or what is it, Darjeeling and the foothills. It's, such an interesting. We haven't had that feeling here in California in a long time, so it's we're appreciating. Oh yeah, this is what it used to kind of be like when it rained. So we have a little bit of, but of course, a lot of water has been coming down pretty quick, and a lot of people have been overwhelmed by it here. But somehow another Laguna Beach has been spared. Usually we get hit by these things. We've been almost spared by most of the flooding that's happened in California the last month or so. We've had just nice rain. Last night was a little bit, we had a lot of rain last night, but so far so good. All right, stay warm, stay dry, stay happy. Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Good night. Good night, Ananda. Good night, Ranmali. Yogamaya is here. I didn't see you. Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Jai Ma.
Hariyo. Elijah, Alex,
Jaima.
Troy Turner, Jai Ma, Troy. Sundari. Hey,
The baby.
baby's here. Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Excellent. Hi there. Anna. It's a pretty cute kid. I don't know what to say.
I agree.
I have a consistently anti-life attitude, so I'm against everything, including puppies and kids and babies and everything. But you got a really, 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 really cute kid. Wow. Hey there. Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Jai Ma.
He was happy to be born in your home.
I think so.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be down soon to feed him some rice.
Yep, it's almost time.
Oh, try it's almost time.
Almost
How
time.
How old is he now?
He's 5 months, so
So
yeah.
Really
so
6 months
after-
is what we do.
Yeah.
If we look at we'll look at give me a text me or something about possible dates or something. If we could on the 6 months day, that'd be great, or any auspicious day around that time.
Okay. Yay.
Are you hungry for rice?
He wants food.
I'm hungry for rice. I want food. All right. Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Jai Ma.
Ananda Ji, Jai Ma, Ananda, Jai Ma, Elijah. Hariyo, Hariyo. Shamala, Jai Ma.